Now good one. Puts on the step, goes right through, puts on the step again. Oh, goes Freddie. That was magnificent stuff. Well, they shall not weary them. Marshall skips away, Marshall's still going. Mullins opens up again. Oh, look at him go. He beats O'Davis on the outside.
Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of The Voluntary Tackle, the only NRL podcast prepared to force Todd Greenberg to do some brownface and play Mahatma Gandhi in an amateur biopic. I'm your host, Eamon Brown, and today on the show I'll be giving our scattershot take on how teams will fare in 2021. And with me to discuss all of our shit takes are Xander Risotto and Media Watch Mario. Welcome, lads.
Good to be here, mate. 2 weeks in a row.
I think that's what we call consistency.
So it's like the New South Wales Blues string of victories in Origin recently.
Yeah, that's right. We won 2 series in a row before we got defeated resoundingly by Anastasia Palaszczuk last year, which was really upsetting. Who knew she'd make such a good lock forward? Mario, how's your week been, Nate?
Mine has just been, it's just its usual self, just, watching basketball, a little bit of work. That's about it.
Yep, fair enough. Listeners, we are planning to do something fairly ambitious here today. We're going to try to review all 16 teams in one show, which I think gives us, I've done the maths on this, about 41 seconds per team if we want to go to bed at a reasonable hour. Are we confident in that?
Yeah, I think we're just going to have to keep it fairly short, 30 seconds aside or something like that. I mean, it should be pretty straightforward, they suck, they're not too bad.
Yes, it's our usual astute judgments. Look, before we start, guys, you know this, I don't just like to talk about rugby league. I needed to draw this to everyone's attention. Did you all know that it's actually International Tooth Fairy Day today? And I want to know from you directly, how have you celebrated this momentous occasion?
I haven't. Not going to lie, I didn't know it was International Tooth Fairy Day. And to be honest, I don't know what I would do to celebrate that particular holiday. I mean, apart from maybe perform dental surgery on a neighbour who was making too much noise.
Couldn't you just rip out a molar and give it to a kid who needs it?
Or maybe rip out a kid's molar and tell him to hide it under his bed.
Yeah, I think Michael Jackson used to do that. It was one of his kinks, one of his many kinks. Mario, why would we need a Tooth Fairy Day? Why do we need to raise awareness for a fictitious character who breaks into people's houses and steals children's teeth from under their pillow?
To be fair, that character does pay, a fair bit more than that tooth is really worth, so if you think about it in theory. I actually celebrated the day quite specifically by watching a movie where fairies were getting murdered en masse.
Fantastic.
What movie was that, just out of curiosity? Was that Fern Gully?
No, that would be the classic movie, The Labyrinth. I was showing it to my daughter, and quite early in the movie, this character called Hoggle, I think it was, is going around spraying fairies that when you're trying to save them are busy biting you. So it turns out that fairies, that they're stealing the teeth so they can go around biting humans.
Yeah, mate, I have to admit, my childhood was scarred by watching that movie, and David Bowie actually plays the main antagonist in that one. He's some sort of psychological maniac who goes around singing some bloody good hits.
Indeed, and my daughter seemed to enjoy it. I'm not sure she understood what was going on the whole time, but, we'll wait and see if she wants to watch it again.
I tell you what, Jennifer Connelly, one of my early crushes, I weirdly had crushes on women from an oddly early age. I'm talking 4, 5, 6, which I think's really weird. You didn't even understand what the sexual feeling was. You just go, I like staring at that. And Jennifer Connelly, to this day, I like staring at her.
I remember having a crush on any girl that would look at me when I was that age. But as you said, I had no idea why I felt that way. So, absolutely.
And the drawback there, obviously, Mario, is that you lived alone with your sister. So it got really weird. But look, we're going to actually start reviewing the teams, guys, before we completely run out of time tonight. And what I thought we might do is actually go through our placings of 1 to 16. We've all put together a ladder. We don't know what each other has chosen. And we're going to start with mine, and I'm going to go from first down to 16. And we'll have a bit of a chat about that team's chances and also find out where you guys have placed this team. Now, as much as it pains me, and everyone knows I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Roosters fan, first on the ladder for 2021, I haven't got the Mighty Roosters there. I just couldn't do it. I've got to choose with my head and not my heart today. I remember in 2019, I chose with my penis, which was much weirder, although I did get a big multi that year. First place for me, minor premiers, the Melbourne Storm. Where did you guys have the Melbourne Storm?
much as I wanted to put the Roosters first, I couldn't go past Melbourne. They really haven't lost all that much in the way of talent. The positions that they've had to replace for, they're just so well stocked at. They're such a clinical machine, and through the season, there are just very few other sides that are able to manage that level of consistency. So
we've both got the minor premiers. Mario, where have you got the Storm? And I know you're a massive fan.
As the massive Melbourne Storm fan that I am, I'm going to point out that I also did this ladder before any injuries happened this weekend, but I'm going to stick with it regardless. Melbourne Storm in first place, finishing on 38 points.
My God. So all of us, and listeners, this isn't a rigged job. We didn't know what each other was going to choose. We've all chosen the Melbourne Storm as minor premiers. Look, to give my 2 cents, for me, they're just one of these teams that I don't think is going to go backwards. They are the reigning premiers, and I actually think they have the capacity to get better, which is quite scary. Harry Grant replacing Cameron Smith, who's, by the way, out for a month. He's hurt himself in the trial match, which will be a bit of a blow to this prediction. But, yeah, I mean, the likes of Pappenhausen, who's only going to get better in my view. Harry Grant early in his career, and he's already carving. They've got that spine covered already. Munster's probably one of the best playmakers in the game. And the guy who really surprised me last year was Jerome Hughes, who I guess started out the season berating quite heavily. I'm not sure if everyone remembers that. I said he wasn't a halfback shoelace, which is a weird 1950s expression. I shouldn't have said it for a start. But my God, he's developed in the number 7 jersey, and his kicking game is second to none.
We should have seen that coming in a lot of ways, because Melbourne have got a history of turning players who don't look like they belong in a 7 and making them incredibly good 7s. So.
It's amazing.
Brodie Croft says hi.
Brodie Croft, yeah, but he did say hi from the Broncos.
That is true, although that was one of my worst predictions last year. Brodie Croft will have a big season. But I never said at what. He was prolific at watching Married at First Sight. He wasn't good at rugby league, obviously. What other factors have you got here, guys, for why the Melbourne Storm can go back-to-back this year?
They'll probably be less restricted on the travel front as things return to normal.
Well, that's the other part, right? They'll actually have a home ground. Yeah. So they actually won last year under some kind of duress.
Yes. Yeah.
On the downside, they haven't got Vunivalu anymore, who I thought had a stellar year. And no offence to him, but I don't think Remus Smith is really going to fill his boots in quite the same way. They've also got no Big Tino, who's gone up to the Gold Coast Titans, so they'll lose some muscle there. But most importantly, Mario, they've still got bellyache, because as we know, he just creates a system where everyone carves, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And yeah, they've lost a few players, but they always find more, as we've said. So, we've just spent about 6 minutes, I think, on one team already, so this is going well.
Yeah, I sense we may need to split this into 2 weeks, but
look, we'll see how we go.
Yeah.
Look, in second place, I have the mighty Roosters. Where did you guys have the Roosters?
I've got the Roosters, you're not going to like this, down in 6th place, finishing on 31 points.
It's got them falling there, Xander. Where have you got them?
I've got us at second as well. The trials so far have restored my faith in, or reinforced my faith that Robinson knows what he's doing and has actually pulled the right rein on the halves contracts last year. I mean, I was really impressed with Lachlan Lamb in that trial against the Raiders yesterday, and they just looked to be humming already, even though it's trials and they'd had players coming back to back. I think that people are going to underestimate us, but I think they're actually going to be real contenders this year.
I mean, I have to admit, I kind of see 2021 as a bit of a 5-horse race, which we'll get to, but I had some reservations about this year's roster and whether or not we could actually improve, and it was a very disappointing end to last year, considering, we were looking red hot for most of it and fell away quite badly, out in straight sets, which isn't the sort of typical Roosters style under coach Trent Robinson. But I'm with you, Xander. I love that trial, and I know you can only take so much currency from a trial, but the combinations there we seem to have gone from a bit of a hedge when it comes to the halfback stake. So we've got no Karl Flanagan. I'm not entirely sure what's happened there. Something odd about him leaving, because I thought he was playing perfectly well for a young kid. But we've gone with sort of a combination of Sam Walker, who's untested at first grade, but it definitely shows a lot of promise. And you've got Lachlan Lamb, who I thought had a couple of games last year and played really well. And then we've got that guy from New Zealand who actually came on yesterday as well and played quite well at hooker. So they look like he might be a potential number 9 replacement. Here he's still going to be the guy running the show. Actually, the combinations look pretty good to me. But I want to get to Mario because, Xander, he's got us dropping to 6th out of the top 4. It seems outrageous, but we'll hear you out.
I actually wouldn't be surprised to see the Roosters make the grand final. I simply think you've got Radley and Verrills coming back from long-term injuries. You've got Cordner that may or may not even play another game in his career. I just think, and you've got brand new halves coming through. I think there's going to be a bit of teething to go through for you guys to get yourself back in order. I think you probably will get it back in order by the end of the season. It's just going to cost you a few games early on.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's some logic to that. I will say this. We've got the X factor. We don't know if Suwali at some stage is going to come into the team. I assume he will. Going on that trial and I guess some of the back-end games of last year, it just cements in my mind how good the Morris twins are.
Yeah.
Brett Morris, I'm not sure if anyone had seen the trial or not, but there was a point where Jordan Rapana, who, by the way, looks a hell of a lot fitter this year because he's always carrying injuries, stepped a few people, put a big don't argue on Manu and made a break down the field. He had a 15-metre head start on Brett Morris.
Morris bloody caught him. I couldn't believe it.
Caught him within about 30 or 40 metres and crunched him.
Yeah.
So, what are they, 35 now?
I know.
He has no right to be that fast still.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Can I just say something about Joey Manu? I noticed in the Indigenous versus Maori game that he seemed really slow. He was still strong, but a couple of times he had some space and it looked like he was running through mud.
Yeah, I tell you, Manu is supremely talented. And, for most of the time, I think he plays great footy. But he definitely has games where he does look a bit stuck in the mud and he kind of looks a bit subdued. Xander, would you agree with that?
I mean, I haven't really noticed that. The Indigenous All-Stars game I actually missed, as we discussed earlier. Yeah. But,
because we're a dedicated rugby league podcast.
Yeah, no, I completely forgot it was on somehow. But no, I mean, I generally speaking, his athleticism and his agility,
so much class.
Yeah, I mean, the guy, I've seen him make incredible breaks as well. Maybe he's just having a slow start to the year. He's still working off some of that Christmas.
There's a bit of a rumour that Manu wants to play in the number 1. He has ambitions to play in the number 1.
He's filled number 1 for us a few
exactly.
times, and he's been bloody good there.
So I'll just throw this one at you as a bit of a curveball, Xander. Can you see a switch from Teddy to 6 and Manu to 1 at any stage?
No. I mean, I just,
I'm glad you thought about it anyway.
I mean, Suwali's being groomed as the switch to 1 eventually. I mean, if Teddy goes to 6, maybe. He puts in some deft little kicks in attack, Teddy, when he's been given the freedom to do it. But I think that's a longer-term prospect. I don't know if that's,
Yeah, it might be a bit of a furphy. But for the record, I think Luke Keary is flipping to 7 this season, which will be interesting in itself. And everyone have a bit of a watch out for Angus Crichton because he had an enormous trial, and in the back end of last year, he was sensational. But as you said, Mario, before, we are lagging in time. We're going to go to my third place prediction, which is the Canberra Raiders. Look, for me, they were amazing at the back end of last year, considering the duress that they were under, particularly the loss of some major talent in Hodgson. They're missing Bateman this year, but Hudson Young ready to step up. I still see them as a major threat. Where do you guys see them?
Yeah, I had them as third as well. I was actually quite impressed with them in the trial against us. Ryan James was really impressive, I thought, for them. They were... Their forward pack was as dominant and as hard to sort of bring down as it was at the back end of last year, I thought. And it was just probably even more impressive for the fact that it was a trial.
Yeah, this is like Ryan James' redemption year, right? Because he didn't get cut from the Titans because he wasn't talented. He got cut from there because he kept getting injured, and eventually they kind of lost faith in his body. And he's been thrown a lifeline down at the Raiders. From what I understand, he's had a massive preseason. So if they can actually get the real Ryan James, that almost sounds a bit like an Eminem hit,
yes,
but then he could have a whopper of a year. But I think as everyone has just sort of got their fingers crossed, his body could stay together.
Yeah, well, I mean, their forwards have always been really hard to contain. But again, I think also they've got another year with combinations in the halves as well, with Whiten and Williams having had a really good year together last year, and that'll only get better, I think.
Mario, big question mark for me with the Raiders, though, is the centre pairing. I've never been a big fan of Curtis Scott, and I've got a guy called Tomoko, who I don't really know much about. Do you think that could be a potential weakness in the Green Machine?
Well, let's hope so.
Can I ask this, Mario? Is there a team outside of Manly that you do like?
I like any team that's playing the Storm.
Okay, that's right. He has explained that before, Xander, which is an unusual system. Now, this might sound weird coming from a Roosters fan, but in fourth spot, I can't leave them out because they are looking a little bit delectable at the moment, and that is the South Sydney Rabbitohs. I think they're going to be a major threat. From what I can tell, in the pre-season, Cody Walker's combinations with his outside backs hasn't gone anywhere. I was kind of hoping Cody Walker's confidence would leave him because that can actually happen from time to time. So I've got them in fourth spot. Where have you guys got him?
Well, I've got the Raiders. Since you didn't ask, in fourth, finishing on 32 points.
Didn't I ask you?
No.
Mate, who needs your opinion? Anyway, sorry about that, mate.
I've got Souths finishing just behind the Storm on for and against on 38 points.
So second.
Yep.
That's scintillating, mate. I love that. So why do we think they're going to go well this year?
I think that their window is right there. They've got Latrell hopefully for a full season after he was absolutely killing it last year. I just see no reason for them not to get that little bit better. And with Jai Arrow coming as well, he just rounds out that forward pack quite nicely. And I think they've got the squad that should be consistent enough to be winning games all season and just get them past that hurdle they've sort of struggled to get through of, making the prelim and then getting palmed in the face by Josh Papali.
I mean, it's a pretty impressive comeback for Latrell Mitchell, isn't it, Xander? Because he had his muscle effectively ripped off the bone last year. And I think most people thought he probably wouldn't return maybe until week 4 or 5. He was back for the Indigenous All-Stars game and he doesn't seem too encumbered.
It was pretty impressive in that trial against St. George, the Charity Shield trial. The Charity Shield against the George yesterday. Mind you, they all were. They scored 9 tries.
Effectively, they lined up against 17 training bags, though, didn't they? St. George looked terrible this year.
That is the question mark as I have, is that, St. George, I've got them very low this year, so it's kind of hard to really gauge how good they are. I mean, they're going to play the Storm in the first round, so I think that'll be a better barometer of where they're at. I still have sort of some questions about whether or not they'll go the distance. Last year when they did miss a couple of players here and there, they did struggle to fill those gaps when Latrell went down.
They had Corey Allen, who did a pretty decent job.
Yeah, no, Corey Allen was good there, but he was nothing like what Latrell was becoming.
No, that's right. And he's gone now anyway. I think he's gone to the Dogs, I believe.
Yeah, no, he has too. So no, I mean, I think they're going to be up there. I think they could absolutely be top 4. I just have question marks about what happens, to their depth and the fact that they brought Benji Marshall in. If anything happens to their halves, I kind of worry if he's the backup.
Well, it's funny. The Benji Marshall's an interesting piece of the South puzzle this year, isn't it? Because he's played under Wayne before. He was sort of part of the Benji comeback story in the NRL, and he played a role off the bench for the Broncos that was really successful. I think this is going back about 5 odd years from memory. And he'd come on and sort of game manage the back end like the last 20 minutes, and he did that really effectively. And I'm wondering if Wayne might have similar ideas of using him that way again, Mario.
Just on South struggling without Latrell, did they not beat the Roosters by about 4,000 points without Latrell?
I think Mario had that stored up for a while. It didn't matter what you said, Xander, then. He was just ready to load that.
Yeah, you're right. It was I couldn't let that one slide, sorry.
No, fair enough.
They did lose to the Dogs, though.
Cameron Murray, my only last little point on Souths, I think he's too small to play in the middle. They're going to move him back to the edge. I'm a big fan of Cameron Murray, but he's quite diminutive. 5th place, I've got the Penrith Panthers falling a little bit this year. I just don't know if this batch of young guys are going to be able to measure up against the weight of expectation that they're going to have in 2021. In 2020, they had no expectation whatsoever, so much so that I didn't even have them in my top 8 from memory. And then obviously they went on a massive run, an amazing season, fell at the last hurdle. I think that there are other teams are going to be lining up against them this year. How does everyone else see that?
I had them at 4th. I think they're going to drop a bit as well. They do lose Tedavano, Waiteni Zalesniak, Tarmau. So they're gonna lack a little bit, and their gains haven't been that great. But I do think that the core group of players that made them so successful last year, they've still got Coruscant, Cleary, and Luai, in their spine, and I think that is probably still one of the most dynamic combinations going around.
Do you think there's something in this psychologically? I felt like because they have been this group of young guys that have virtually played together for all of their junior footy, and they've won comp after comp after comp, and then they all came into first grade kind of at once. I mean, I know Cleary's been there for a little while, but sort of a lot of these other guys coming through. And once they got on that run, they kind of didn't know what losing felt like. And then in the grand final, they got schooled by a very experienced Bowen Constrictor type team in the Melbourne Storm. And I wonder if that's something that might be nagging in the back of their minds this year, that, we actually are fallible.
I mean, that was Phil Gould's narrative. I don't really buy it. When you look through that sort of team, there were plenty of players who had lost grand finals in their junior days. But I do think that it could go one of two ways. It could go that way, or it could actually make them a lot hungrier because they got that bloody close and they almost stole it at the end as well in the grand final last year. So I don't think if it's managed well, it'll be to their detriment. I think they actually could use that to really, make them hungrier this year.
Mario, where did you have the Panthers?
I had the Panthers also dropping a little, but only down to third place on 34 points. That being said, I anticipate them going out in the finals in straight sets.
Okay, and what do you attribute that to?
Look, I think, as you said, everyone slept on them a little bit last year. They were sort of underrating Luai and Cleary. Their forwards were just doing such a great job. Edwards performed much better than I think he actually is. And people like he's still good, but what are they doing in right centre in terms of May and Naden? I don't really rate either of them now. I just think they're gonna slip. Everyone performed out of their skin overall, and I think they're just gonna slip that little tiny 1-3% on each position and end up just not being quite good enough, and then be found out when it counts.
Yeah, I think you're right about the Tyrone May love affair. I don't know what Ivan Cleary's thought pattern is there, but he seems to absolutely be madly head over heels in love with Tyrone May. Perhaps he wants to make a sex tape with him one day. I'm not sure, but it was really puzzling because you say, and fair enough, Murray, you don't rate Naden. Personally, I think Naden's a freak. I think he's 100% the first option at that right centre, and I have no idea why Tyrone May was being selected ahead of him and having Naden come off the bench. I've noticed most of the analysts this year predicting Tyrone May to play a 14 role, and they've got Naden in the starting side, although he won't be playing the first few weeks because Naden's got, I think he was on the coke late last year, so they're standing him down for at least a couple of games. But I tell you what, who I'm really excited about is Charlie Staines, because they've got rid of the sauce, they got rid of the heart and soul of the outside backs in Mansour, who everyone loved, and I don't think that went down too well with the Panthers faithful, but Charlie Staines is an excitement machine. What's he batting at now? I think he's got 7 tries in 3 games, hasn't he?
Charlie Staines and Crichton together, they are an exciting combo, and if they can make a good combination and really click, then they could certainly do a lot of damage. I think they'll rely on that a lot, but they've just got to get all those other pieces to all keep working together, and time will tell. They may well go on and win it all. Who knows? I'll
tell you another weakness in my view, Ivan Cleary's absolute inability to smile. I think it is a worry, and we'll see how that takes a toll on the team during the season. 6th place, fellas. Reluctantly, because I'm not a fan of these guys, but I had to fit them in somewhere, and I think they will be playing finals football, is the Parramatta Eels. Where did you guys have the Parramatta Eels finishing?
I've got them in 5th place, finishing on 32 points, just behind the Raiders on for and against. I think, again, Moses, he comes and goes too much. They've got a few injury issues. Gutho performed out of his skin last year, despite what Twitter would have you think. He actually was exceptional, but I'm not convinced he can be quite that good again. I think that, what's his name, Reid Marnie, I think he's actually garbage, and if they ever actually start calling all his forward passes, he's going to get found out in a hurry.
That's right. You've made that comment a few times that Reid Marnie has the capacity to throw the odd forward pass. Xander, where did you have the Eels finishing?
I kind of concur with you guys. I had them a little bit lower, though. I had them at 7th. I do think that the problem with Para has been that they've been flat track bullies for a couple of years. They play good, expansive, open footy in dry conditions, but they don't seem to really be able to get down and grind out wins.
Look, I agree with you. It is one of these teams that don't excite me, and I can't even really describe exactly why that is. It's interesting because last year there was so much preseason hype. I might have been part of that chorus because I'm just a bandwagoner, let's face it. But I noticed this year decidedly different, and it's not like there's a seismic change in the roster. It's a pretty similar looking side than what we saw last year, and for most of last year, they were batting right up there until they fell away when they they had to play the top teams. I think that was the big criticism. The Parramatta Eels, when a top team was playing well, they couldn't foot it with them. So they're kind of the Andy Murray of the NRL world, and they don't want to be the Andy Murray because, he should have done more in that Scottish massacre. We know that. But I'll tell you another person who I think it's a huge year is Fergo, the former Roosters legend, Xander. I just say that for no good reason. He played a few years. He won a comp. That's Mario vomiting in the background. We apologise for that. That was genuine regurgitation, by the way. Nothing, he wasn't mimicking anything there. But I think he's off contract, and he had a decidedly flat year last year. What was that attributed to, Xander, and do you think he can bounce back?
Yeah, it was odd, wasn't it? I mean, I couldn't work it out. I mean, he was coming off an injury the back end of the year before, and so maybe it was that. But yeah, it took him ages to score a try.
He never even looked like scoring for about 3.5 months.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't
maybe
know.
he had COVID. Could explain the hair loss.
Yeah, I think that predates that. I think that was the chemo.
Yeah, that's right. We called him chemo for a year. That was out of touch. Should never have done that. Mario mentioned this before. I'm a huge fan of Gutho. I think he's probably their number one spark. Moses, I'm definitely 50-50 on him.
Moses is not a big game player.
And he needs to learn how to be dominant in games where his forward packs aren't dominant, because he seems to absolutely go missing. And I know that's a criticism that's made of a lot of halves, but particularly Mitchell Moses.
He panics is my observation is when they've been playing in a game where they haven't had that sort of go forward, or it's been really tight. So he tries to do too much.
Yep.
His game management's just not up there with the other top halves in the game.
Yep, fair enough too. And don't worry, they have had some major purchases in Bryce Cartwright, so we'll see how that goes.
What's his name? Keegan Hipgrave. Don't forget that legend as well.
That's right. The guy gets sent off every 8 or 9 minutes. I mean, that's an impressive strike rate to do something that illegal that regularly. 7th place, gents. I've actually got the Gold Coast Titans playing finals football in 2021. I know they're heavily touted pre-season, way too much. I think they're probably overrated when it comes to the betting agencies and most of the analysts, but I do love what Justin Holbrook's done up there. I thought they were a really transformed side, and they actually had some self-belief, Mario, for the first time ever. Where did you see them finishing, and do you agree with me?
I agree with you. I have them in 7th, equal with the Roosters on 31 points, just behind on for and against. They've made the right moves with their pack. I think David Fafita is a really good inclusion. They've got rid of some of the older handbrakes and not relying on guys like Peets anymore, and getting rid of Cartwright and Hipgrave is a huge improvement to the team. And as you say, they've had an extra season together now. Holbrook seems to be doing a good job, and I don't think they're going to win the grand final. But I think, a prelim's not out of their range. It's probably overachieving, but they could do it.
Xander, Mario mentioned there David Fafita. That's the highlight acquisition in the off-season. But they also got Big Tino from the Storm. They really have beefed up front.
This is kind of why I think there is a lot of hype, obviously, because of the big signings up front. And that's also why I actually don't have them as high as you guys. I have them at 10th. When you spend that much money on forwards, I kind of wonder, Fafita had a few stints on the sideline with injury last year. So I have a bit of a worry that they're going to be, they're going to be a little bit not as bad as North Queensland, but like them where they put $1 million on Taumalolo and, great forward. But if all your money's going on a forward, I have some concerns about how dynamic your team's going to be.
Why do you have to be such a dream crusher, Xander? Unbelievable, mate. This is the rugby league narrative for 2021. You realise that the whole comp is riding on top of the Titans at the moment because they have been shite for a decade. So it'd be nice to see them bounce back. Remember that time they thought all of their dreams could be hedged on the back of Jared Haynes' wagon? Wasn't that a mistake? They should never have done that.
They got all bloody.
They really did. Look, you talk about creativity, though. We should mention that. I mean, Ash Taylor, I thought it was the resurgence of Ash Taylor last year. We saw the glimpses of what he actually could do. He didn't earn all of his $1 million a year, but I think he was earning at least half of it.
He was definitely better, and but I still don't see him as a top half in the competition as it is, and he's not consistent enough. So I don't know. I think they'll be better. I just don't think they're going to be a top 8 side.
Fair enough. And look, they'll definitely miss a bit of speed without Michael Gordon there, and a bit of smack and a bit of horse tranquilizer as well. 8th place. This one was another tough one for me, guys, to put them in there because I don't really rate them. This is where the gulf exists. I really do think it is a 5-team race this year. and there's a bit of a drop-off after that. But I've got the Knights finishing there purely because Kalen Ponga will return at some point, and also Tyson Frizzell's there. That's enough to get them a final spot in my view, but where did you guys have them?
So I had Newcastle at ninth.
That'd be nice if they finished ninth, because I'd love to get that picture of Mitch Pearce when they just miss in that last round match.
I have a lot of time for Adam O'Brien. I think he's a great coach, but he seemed to be struggling to deal with just how hot and cold they were. Like, I think the team, the makeup of that team, they lack a bit of grit. And
they did go win-loss a lot, didn't they, last year?
Yeah, and I remember seeing him just completely at a loose end as to how to fix it. And I don't think there's been enough changes to their roster and enough new leadership to really impact that. So I just don't see them as being... I think they'll be good because I think he's a good coach, and they've still got some quality players in the halves and some decent forwards. But I just have a lot of question marks about how consistent they can be.
Mario, according to the chick that was recently sexting Mitch Pearce, they will scrape into 8th spot, but where did you have them?
With Xander on this one, I've got them down on 28 points in 9th place. I think Tyson Frizzell, unfortunately, doesn't strengthen their team. I think he hasn't been good since about 2018, and I think people on social media seem to mostly get that, but the media just don't. They still go on about him like he's the greatest forward in the game, and he just hasn't been it. And even when he was free of Mary McGregor and playing for the Blues, he wasn't really doing much there either. I don't think he's really got it in him anymore. Hopefully, I like the guy, so hopefully, a different coach, an off season and everything will pick him up. But I just don't see a whole lot of improvement in the Knights on last year, and I think they overachieved, hence dropping a couple of places.
Look, I've got to agree with you with Tyson Frizzell. He definitely hasn't been the player that he was, I'd say, for a season and a half. And I know that he seemed unhappy there, so I attribute a lot of that to that. But also, I think he has been carrying injury. So I don't know, if he can shake those two factors, we could still well see the best of Tyson Frizzell. They're going to need it because, there's a bit of a soft underbelly there up there at the Knights. I'm not sure if David Clemmer is really the kind of guy that's going to be marshalling your pack anymore. I think he's on the other side of the mountain. I like the Saifides. I think they're solid without being sensational. If I'm looking to bright spots, I'll be looking at Bradman Best and Tex Hoy, who are, great young guns. I think Tex Hoy
was brilliant last year.
Yeah, we showed glimpses. Yeah. Like, he wasn't playing 80 minutes, but I thought he was good in glimpses. And what do we guys think of Bradman Best?
I think he should have stayed at Manly, and unfortunately he's not, so he can go get fucked.
And on that note, we're going to go to who I have in 9th place, which is the Canterbury Bulldogs. I'm seeing them make a major surge this year. I was very tempted to actually throw them in the 8th spot. But I just look at, I don't know if they're quite the complete team this year. I think in 2022, when they get the likes of the Fox there, for example, and probably Matt Burton as well, then I think they'll be a genuine finals contender. But I think we should see a rise. Where did you guys see them?
I think people have very quickly forgotten just how shit a coach Trent Barrett is. And I've got them down in 13th on just 16 points.
Wow. Now, there is a big question mark, Xander, on Trent Barrett. He had a particularly sad end to his chapter at the Manly Seagulls. Obviously, Mario has some skin in the game. I think he's still very hurt by it. But what I really enjoyed about the end of his tenure at Manly, I don't know if you remember this, he refused to leave after he was fired, and they hired Des Hasler to sort of be the coach as well. And it was sort of an awkward sort of Mexican standoff at Brookvale as both coaches tried to hang on to their jobs. But I will say this in their defence, the Bulldogs, they've bought Kotrick, they've bought Flanagan, Jack Hetherington, Corey Allen. That's a hell of a list coming in, and they've actually shed a hell of a lot of dead weight.
I actually did go one better. I had them at 8th. I don't actually think that Trent Barrett is as bad a coach as Mario thinks. I think he turned up at Manly, to I think what can only be described as a snake pit by all accounts. Vince Lombardi would have struggled in that environment.
Brett Stewart calls the snake pit a date,
but no, he
Allegedly.
was not cut out for entering that level, of sort of backstabbing, almost ancient Rome level poisonous politics that goes on in the North Shore.
Mario, is that a fair assessment? Do you think the Penn family can be equated to Caligula?
Oh, I don't think he's incorrect on that one. I'm not a huge fan of the Penn family, but then again, I think he has the best intentions. I'm not sure of everything he does. I would take exception to calling us as coming from the North Shore. We're from the Northern Beaches, thank you. Look, I just think the Bulldogs are a year away. I think perhaps a year, if Barrett, if his sexy good looks can inspire the team and get something out of him, then 2022 might be the year with Fox and Birdo coming. But the fact is, no player likes having their coach being younger and better looking than them, and he is going to turn off the team, and they're going to get upset and tell him to get fucked.
It's an interesting theory. I reckon that as Eamon has said, I think that they have shed a lot of dead weight this year. I do think that the players he has brought in are going to make a real impact, and I think that his work ethic, in an environment that is, I know the Bulldogs have got their own political problems and they're also quite significant, but by all accounts he has been given free rein and he's matured as a coach, and I think deciding to take a step back and go into the assistant coaching role at Penrith in a year that they made the grand final, he will take a lot out of that. And a lot out of the experience at Manly, and I think he'll be a much better coach for it. And the players he's picked up, it's enough to get them in the 8, I think. We'll wait and see. But
a step back's a very generous description of couldn't get a job anywhere else.
You might be right there, mate, but he did land on his feet at Penrith. He was a grand finalist and not a bad talent roster over there as well, which he's already stolen about 15% of, which is a good effort.
That was the other reason I kind of think they'll do all right, is because he took a fair chunk of Penrith with him.
I mean, Matt Burton, to me, is one of the most exciting prospects in the game, and he's coming to the Dogs in 2022. What a coup. Kerrod Holland, I mean, put a red pen through him. That's enough to say you're going to have a good year, because that's excellent judgment from Trent. And I think Mario's quite right. He's a sexy, sexy man, and he seems to be the Benjamin Button of the NRL. He seems to be getting younger and younger as time goes on. Eventually, he'll just be a good-looking fetus leading teams to victory.
I think it's interesting, actually, on the Benjamin Button question, because, I mean, we had our own, what we thought might have been a Benjamin Button in good old Fitzy at the Roosters, who's recently just been given life membership. I mean, he came out of the womb, I believe, looking like an 80-year-old, but he's actually not gotten any younger. He just stayed that way.
He's now static. I think it's not even a Benjamin Button case with Fitzgibbon. I think he, as you said, he was born into the body of a 55-year-old male, and he's just stayed like that. Although he's got balder over the time. That has to be said. He's now completely hairless. So I've been told. I don't know if he's completely hairless. So I don't know if those pictures have emerged on Twitter yet. But enough about Fitzgibbon's pubes. Let's go to 10th spot, in which place I've got the Warriors finishing, guys. I was saying to Xander on the way over to the studio today, the Warriors really frustrate me because they tend to be the team that completely derail my multis, because I just don't know what to expect from them. I guess there's a big development in the off-season. They've got a completely different coaching regime. They've got Gus and Brownie out there. This could be the best double-up since the comedian Carrot Top teamed with Yahoo Serious. I don't know, Mario. It could also be a disaster. How do you see it going over there at the Warriors, and where did you have them?
I couldn't disagree with you much more than I do. I've got Nathan Brown doing what he does best and collecting spoons. The Warriors are going to finish in last with 8 points. You have to remember...
Wow, you've got them coming last.
They're going to have to spend, again, a good chunk of the season out of New Zealand. That's already been basically confirmed. They're not... The whole goodwill of it and everything that went their way last season, that's all worn off. Everyone's over COVID. They're over that shit. People they're sick of it. And they're sick of the Warriors. They don't like Phil Gould. Then Nathan Brown is a terrible, terrible coach who's going to spend 5 years rebuilding the team to achieve nothing whatsoever, because that's what he's done before. Last, and they'll be lucky to get 8 points.
So Mario's on the fence, Xander. I need to get my opinion from you. Where do you think the Warriors will finish in? And also, how do you feel about their recruitment in players like Fanua Blake? Maybe that's why Mario's a bit dirty on them. He's stolen Manly's best forward. Will he make a difference to a team which has a tendency to struggle consistently up front? They've always got big guys that can dominate for 20 minutes, but you need 80-minute dominance in the game of rugby league.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit closer to you. I think they're going to be their unpredictable best and finish about 11th. So that's where I had them. I actually do think that they've done all right in the off-season. Bailey Sirinen from the Rabbitohs as well, I think is going to help. Kane Evans from the Eels, I don't know so much. He was all right last year for the Eels.
He was, average.
But, Ewan Aitken from the Dragons, But, yeah, Fanua Blake, I think, is definitely a plus for them. And the coaching regime is a question mark. I thought it was a mistake for them to hire Brown. But I just don't know with the Warriors. I don't think they're going to be the worst, just because they are so bloody unpredictable. I think they're just going to jag a few sneaky games and be around the middle of the bottom 8.
Well, I mean, last year they were a bit of a turn up for the books, weren't they? Because they had everything against them. Half the team decided to go home. They got homesick. They didn't have a great roster to begin with. Before COVID, they played 2 shockers before the comp was suspended, and yet they came back and sort of rallied. I know they had to absorb players from other teams to even field a squad, but under Todd Payten, I thought they were actually doing a pretty good job, and they showed some heart and some grit. But they haven't got Todd Payten now. He's gone and taken up another gig with the Cowboys, and they've got this unusual meshing of Nathan Brown, who, as Mario said, is a stellar acquisition when it comes to wooden spoons. And you've got Gus Gould, who hasn't been really in the coaching ranks since he got the punt from Penrith. So, I don't know. For me, again, there's so much variability here. I can't say with any certainty where they're going to finish. I just can't see them in the finals. I think that's, to me, pretty certain. And I've got a question to pose to the table. The impending departure of Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, will that play a part in the psychology of the team this year, knowing that their captain isn't in next year? He's defecting to another code.
I think they could go one or two ways, where he might not be 100% because he'll be trying to make sure he stays fit to play rugby union, which is a concern.
You think he won't put his body in?
Yeah, I worry about that with players who, because he's taking a big gamble going to union, right? He'll want to be his best there. So
right. They're almost a not-for-profit these days.
Yeah, well, basically. Well, I mean, in New Zealand they're doing all right, so it's a bit different there. But I really wonder about that. You can see a rallying effect potentially coming into a play where the team around him, he's a really well-liked captain, wanting to do well for him, but I don't know.
So I got to say, RTS for me always been a bit overrated. You know my opinions on this. I think he looks flashy, but he's not as effective as people make out he is. They just love him in fantasy league because he gets a lot of the meter eaters on the kick returns.
I think he plays his heart out. I don't have any doubt that he will play his heart out again. I don't see him as the sort of person to hold back just because of next year. So I'm not going to go with you there. But that being said, I don't think he's what he has ever been made out to be, certainly not anymore. I don't think he offers enough. He probably inspires the team pretty well, but that might be slightly diminished knowing the fact that he's leaving. So, yeah, I'm indifferent on him. You know where I've got them finishing, so I don't see him making an appreciable difference either way.
I feel like Roger Tuivasa-Sheck should just be that guy who makes the NRL promo vids because he looks $1 million but should never play. Anyway, I'm going to go to 11th spot. I've got the Cowboys finishing in 11th spot. I did and ah about this because, again, I feel like this is a team that's definitely not going to play finals. But the only reason I've got them up in 11th spot and not lower is on the back of Todd Payten. I think he will be good for the club. I thought they were really stale under Paul Green, and they've done the right move by parting company. I know he got them a premiership, but it's been 2 or 3 years now of the same block play. And as a rugby league fan, they're the games, whenever Cowboys are playing, they're the games I can't be bothered watching because they are really, really boring post Jonathan Thurston. But this squad, to me, still too many big talent gaps. I've gone with 11th. Where did you guys have them?
I had them at 13th. There's been virtually no changes to their roster. I think they've got Lachlan Burr from the Warriors and Kane Bradley.
Yeah, they're not the kind of guys you put on the billboards, are they?
I mean, they're not. And I have genuine questions about Todd Payten. I thought what happened last year with the Warriors was impressive, but that was such a unique circumstance. I wonder if that is going to translate into a new club. He had he stepped up to the plate in the middle of a crisis, but I wonder what it'll be like in a more conventional setting with him. So I had them at 13th. I just don't see them as being that competitive.
Mario, people in rugby league circles will tell you that if you're going to go coach the Cowboys, you need to really enmesh yourself in that community to be successful. Todd Payten, he's new to Townsville. How do you think he'll go, and where did you have the Cowboys finishing?
I've got the Cowboys in 10th place. I kind of had them in the top 8 briefly just because I think Todd Payten is a significantly better coach than what they had. But in the end, I think they haven't lost much either. Like, Gavin Cooper was on his way out. I think him being gone is probably actually an improvement for them. John Asiata, he was never quite what we all thought he could be. So although I think he's a loss, he's not a huge loss. But as you said, they've gained nothing. Looking through the signings, there's just not a name there that means anything to me. It doesn't mean one or two of them might not be great, but yeah, I've just got them in 10th, finishing on 24 points. So they're competitive for a fair bit of the season, but never never quite getting there.
Yeah, you can't really imagine the Lachlan Burr bumper stickers being very popular up there at Townsville, can you? He's not the kind of guy I think that will get bums on seats. I think for me, it's the halves where it's most troubling. I think Michael Morgan hasn't played great footy for 2 seasons now. He's sort of in that Tyson Frizzell mould in terms of form. And the guys coming through might be semi-talented but not very consistent, the likes of Clifford and Drinkwater. They can have the odd good game, but they need a really controlling half. They haven't got that. Valentine Holmes, up and down. So for me, I can't see them doing too well. I'm going to go to 12th now, which is your club, Mario. I've got Manly finishing in 12th. Foran is back. That's the big ticket item for the Manly Seagulls. This is a halves combination which has won a premiership. Can Kieran Foran get them back on the right track, Mario?
Well, he can't get us into the 8 unless Tommy Turbo stays the hell of the way from the Corso and, sticks to the training paddock. That being said, Cade Cust got injured today after 25 minutes. We cannot go even a trial match without an injury. I have zero confidence in our strength and conditioning staff. I have limited confidence in Des Hasler's selections. I feel this horrible feeling like, we're going to end up seeing bloody Ruben Garrick at fullback and George Tafua back on the wing at some point. So I've got us finishing 11th on 20 points. And I honestly have this horrible feeling like that's just me being a bit biased, having them up that high.
Mario, you're right about the strength and conditioning. It seems as though Manly have had a pretty rotten run for 2 seasons in a row now when it comes to injury. Who is your strength and conditioning coach? Is it Larry Nasser?
Oh, I think it's Des Hasler's puppy dog or something, because it's some idiot that he pulled from the Bulldogs, unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, well, as you said, there's a bit of a wafer-thin endurance when it comes to injury prevention. Xander, where did you have Manly finishing?
Yeah, so I had a really optimistic season for Manly, kind of on the romance of Foran being brought back with DC. I thought they're one of those sides that if they can stay injury free, and I guess the trials that I did write this before the trials, they do have a side that'll push a lot of teams. If the Drabojeviches stay fit and you've got Foran and DCE together again. I actually think they'll be really competitive, and they could crack the 8. I had them actually at 6th.
Okay, so you've got them making finals this year.
I did on the proviso that they managed to, not lose too much talent through the season.
Well, you are up against it, Xander, because as we know, some of these players can't even have a shower and not get hurt. So
it's a not hopeful 6, but their full strength team, I like it on paper, and I think that there's something there with Foran coming back.
The thing that I have with them is that, obviously I'm biased and I'm looking a little closer. I love some of our young players. I'm a huge Cade Cust fan. I think Morgan Harper played really well today, and I have high hopes for him at fullback / centre when he comes back. I was very worried about Sawley today. He was quite terrible, but it is only a trial, and he's always got a few kilos on him, and hopefully he's got enough time to sort himself out. As Josh Schuster is a huge talent, and I think he's going to be an absolutely excellent player. I don't know if we're going to see much Ben Turbo this year. I think he's got promise, but there's a lot of hype there, and he's going to struggle to live up to it just because of his surname. It's going to be really hard to come in and live up to the ridiculous expectations that are going to be placed on him.
Yeah, you're right. It's a bit different from the other boys, isn't it? Because they sort of came in relatively close together. But there's a hell of a lot of expectation on the man who looks to be the perfect cross between Jake and Tom. Probably a little bit more like Tom, if I'm going to be honest. But I need to actually ask you about something, Mario, which I found quite troubling when it comes to the 2021 season for Manly, and that is, where is Brendan Elliott? I think you've given him the flick. Why is that? Where's he gone? And who will make the ball boys feel good about their defence now?
Brendan the Brave has gone to England, and I'm very sad about it because I love Brendan. I think he got the raw end of the stick so many times. I just think he's been thrown in the shit end of a team that was underperforming, and he gave it his absolute everything, every game. Man of Steel in England this year. Put your house on it.
No, he'll make a very good insurance broker in Leicestershire, I'm sure. 13th place, guys. We're getting down the list now. I've gone for the Wests Tigers. Look, I understand Michael Maguire has made the team do a lot more ball work pre-season, because normally he just absolutely flogs the shit out of them and doesn't do anything else really pre-season. He sort of sends them off to Yemen or Iraq or Afghanistan, says, I hope you survive. Whoever comes back with a half blown off leg, you can play first grade this year because you're obviously tough. But he's gone for a little bit of a different tack this year because, all the players hate him. All that aside, I don't think it's going to do enough. I can't see why this Tigers team would be any better than previous teams. So I've got them at 13th. Where have you got them, Xander?
So similar to you, I don't see there being too much of a change for them this year. I really don't rate Madge as a coach. I just don't. I have them at 12th, so, see them doing a little bit better. I was tempted to put them at 9th just because I thought it would be funny to have them there at 9th again. But, the players that they've got, they picked up James Roberts, who,
Well, it's an interesting story, isn't it? Because he hasn't brought his A game for a few years, but we know, he can be amazing. But it's where he is at mentally. I hope for his sake he has a blinder, but I don't know if I see it.
Yeah, no, neither do I. I mean, I think the best player they've picked up is probably Tarmau. But yeah, the rest of it, it's a little bit hard for them to see them doing too much better.
Looks a bit bleak, Mario. Where did you have him?
I am with Xander. I've got them finishing in 12th on 18 points. I think the right coach could potentially get the good game out of James Roberts. Do I think Madge Maguire is that coach? Hell no. He's a hard ass. James Roberts is. I'm not going to say too many bad things, but he's got his own issues, and I just don't think that's the place for him to thrive.
James Roberts needs a coach like Trent Robinson, who is willing to put in patience and be really understanding, which Robbo's sort of got a reputation for doing. I think Madge's reputation precedes him on this front. I think he'll drive Roberts to the problems he's got as opposed to away from them.
Yeah, I think exactly the same. I think Des Hasler would be another coach that would probably do well with James Roberts, but I don't particularly want him at my club, so whatever. I think Tigers are going to have a very similar issue to Manly, that we don't have a hooker. The only hooker they've really got is that Little. And he is as big a biscuit as Tommy Turbo. They're going to have to rely on this guy who's probably going to play about 6 games. And, he's basically the new Cole Stanley. The thing is, it's a huge step down from Harry Grant. They had Harry Grant there and they were still not great. It's a very, very large step down from that, and they're going to be found out. And 12th, probably much like with my Manly tip, I feel like maybe I'm being generous to them, but there's some garbage down the bottom, so it's hard to put those teams above. I initially when I first drew up 1 to 16, the first number I put in was Tigers in 9th because I wanted to put them there. I just couldn't.
Look, I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head about Harry Grant, Mario. I think you're right. I think he was outstanding last year, as we all know, and they don't have him this year. So, for someone who played that well in a team that was looking a bit ordinary, you do worry about a team like the Tigers being able to bring, I guess, anything better than what they brought in 2020. People are making a lot of news out of it, but Luke Brooks, I think he's off contract at the end of the year. He hasn't really brought the value that the club needed from him for a couple of seasons in a row. He had one good season, I think it was about 3 years ago, and he hasn't done much since. People have argued that he's been in the shadow of other players like Benji Marshall, which won't be the case this year. But I got to say, not to rain on their parade or be a dream crusher like Xander, but I can't see it happening. Can you guys?
No.
Okay, on a closing note with the Tigers, Madge Maguire is always obsessed with defence, but he loves Joey Lalua. It never makes a lot of sense to me. I never understand that one. Dane Laurie, by the way, another good game. He'll probably be playing fullback. I'm going to go to 14th place now. Look, it's the Cronulla Sharks. Again, I think for that very reason that I don't think there's anything better this year than was there last year. If anything, they've gone backwards. People are placing a bit of pressure on John Morris, who I actually think is a decent coach. He just hasn't got a huge amount to work with. There's a lot of no-names in the outside backs, and with no Bronson Cherry, he's meant to be the star in the outside backs. He's still not there. The only good news that I can have for them, and I searched far and wide for this, is Andrew Fafita looks a hell of a lot leaner. I saw him in the Indigenous All-Stars game, and he looks like he's lost about 15 kgs. So if he can bring something back from the 2016 season, some of that magic, then maybe they can do something. But for me, it's 14th and a very long season for the Sharks.
Yeah, I had them at 14th as well. The only positive I could see is that Tolman had a pretty good back end for the Bulldogs, but he's getting on a bit.
Look, if you're pinning your hopes to Aiden Tolman,
no, but
you're in trouble.
But I just can't see it. I think that it's funny because they came into last year basically in a state of chaos with their roster, and it doesn't seem to have been fixed in a year.
There's a hell of a lot of problems going on roster-wise, Mario. Interested to get your thoughts. Have the Sharks lost their bite?
I'm shocked, honestly. I've got them in 8th, finishing with 30 points. I think they've got a bunch of guys playing for their contracts. Dugan, Johnson, even Aaron Woods. These guys are all, or Toby Rudolph is another one actually. These guys are all on their last season. I think they're all ready to step up. Sean Johnson is also playing for a contract somewhere. He's not that old. I think that they maybe overachieved a little bit last year, but the teams below them weren't that great. And I think the teams below them again this year just aren't that great. I'm looking for a big season from Luke Metcalf. I'm a big fan of him, and I think he can hopefully get a couple of shots in there for them and really step up and show what he can do. I'd like to see him succeed in the halves, or even at fullback potentially, but more likely in the halves somewhere. I've got them at 8th, and I think they're not going to do much in the finals again, but I think they'll be one of those annoying teams that won't go away.
Okay, so Murray, you basically got a repeat of 2020. I think they finished 8th last year. You mentioned Sean Johnson. What a stellar year he did have. I've been one of his biggest critics, but he had a great year last year. I think the problem with the Sharks this year is he won't be there to start the season because he got a really bad injury at the back end and cruciate ligament, so I don't think he's going to be back for at least the first month minimum, which means they have to rely on the prowess of Chad Townsend. That kind of sucks. When it comes to the Metcalfs, I'm more of a fan of Laurie Metcalf, who played Jackie and Roseanne in the 90s sitcom. But when it comes to the Cronulla Sharks, sure, Metcalf's not a bad player. When you said playing for the contracts, though, Mario, the likes of Dugan and Woods, I think Dugan is always playing for his contract, isn't he? I feel like there's never been a time where he's been secure in having his name on the dotted line.
Yeah, but he's been on some pretty good money at the Sharks, and there's a lot of incentive, even if it's to earn a contract in England. He's got to, maybe stay off the green whistle a little bit this year and stay on his feet. And I still think there's a player there. He's just got to remember that it's there, and maybe playing for a contract is that incentive he needs.
Yeah, fair enough. I think he is at this stage more tattoo than man. I think that could be his problem. 15th place, this was probably my biggest polarising decision, I guess, that I had to make throughout all of this process. It was who's going to get the spoon, and I did toss up with this, and in the end, I've gone 15th place, the Brisbane Broncos. Kevin Walters, obviously, the big news there, is taken over as coach. The Anthony Seibold experiment is no more, and he's now working for Westpac, I think, in customer service or something. But look, the roster has diminished. I mean, they were terrible last year, the worst Broncos team that's ever run onto a park, and they've actually got worse roster this year. Katoni Staggs will be injured. He won't be there for the first bit. David Fafita's gone. He's already had a falling out, Kevy, with a few of the players, like Matt Lodge, apparently. They've had a bit of a falling out, which isn't a good sign pre-season. And this was probably the worst sign, I thought, for the Broncos, was there are reports that Kevy's brought in, drum roll please, the coach whisperer. Yes. Guys, where have you seen the Brisbane Broncos finishing this year? I assume the fact that no one's mentioned them yet means you're not thinking they're going to have a big season.
Yeah, I had them at 15th as well. It wasn't actually much of a toss-up, just because I do think that Walters and the old guard, I think he'll bring a tiny bit of something. There's just not been enough, though. Losing Fafita, the fact that the only guy who seemed to be able to score tries for them, the only tries that they had, they weren't created. They just occurred because Staggs walked over somebody. So without Staggs in the first month, it's hard to see them doing too much. 15th.
Yeah. Kevy, he hasn't really got an established track record of success, has he? I mean, I know he's coached at Origin to some success, but do you think he's the man that's going to solve a lot of their dramas up there?
Oh, God, no. Look, I think Kevy's probably a worse coach than Seibold, but he might be better for Brisbane just because of that whole Brisbane DNA and all that sort of stuff. As you said, they've lost more than they've gained. You look at their gains, and the only names you know are Dale Copley, lol, David Mead, lol, and John Asiata. And he's no replacement for David Fafita. So I've got Brisbane in 14th on 12 points, purely on the basis that they were just so beyond bad last year. They'd given up completely. I think they'll go in this year not having given up. They'll have a bit of hope restored. They'll be desperate for some pride, and I think they'll jag a few wins against some of the really terrible teams like the Dragons and the Warriors.
So the only reason I disagree with you is I think that they were motivated at the back end of last year. Remember, they wanted to send out Darius Boyd on a win so he could have that gender reveal at the end. They don't have that motivation anymore, mate. I don't know what they're going to do.
That's a misapprehension, Xander, because it wasn't a gender reveal. It was just a hard tackle, and it turns out he is full of pink stuffing. I don't know if you know that. He's someone that actually has been cut loose. A bit of dead wood has gone from the Broncos squad finally. Jack Bird gone because he has like 0 hamstrings, and Boyd was about 3 years past it. So there's some bright spots for the club at least. And in terms of players that I like, I mean, for me, maybe Turpin. I didn't mind Turpin last year, but there's very few bright spots, Mario.
No, there's not a lot of light at the end of that tunnel. So they're going to. I just think they'll be less obviously bad than last year, but not actually better. Just that you've got to get a few wins. I mean, that finishing on 6 points or whatever it was they were last year, that was 8 points maybe. That's just atrocious, and they're surely going to get a couple more than that.
That's right. I think 2 of those were buys, so don't get too excited, Brisbane Broncos fans. And look, we've come to the last one, 16th place. Who will get the wooden spoon? Some of it's already been revealed because Mario didn't choose this, but for me, it is the St George Illawarra Dragons. Sorry about this, Giannis, and sorry about this, fellow Dragons supporters, but I think the diabolical duo of Matthew Elliott and Hook is just not going to lead you to any success. Trial form looks horrendous, and even pre-season issues look horrendous, as we know. The recruiting is odd. The likes of Andrew McCulloch, I don't think is someone you want to be raking into your team at this point. You get rid of your heart and soul player in Cameron McInnes. You put all of your Dragons faithful offside. I can only see bad things coming for the Dragons this year, I'm afraid. Where do you guys see them?
I agree with you. I had them at last for all the reasons. We spent half of the episode last week talking about just how bad everything has gone for them in the off-season. I just don't think Hook is probably one of the worst coaches in the game. And, yeah, they've picked up Jack Bird from the Broncos. They did pick up Famao, how do you say his name? Trying to say it a lot.
The guy from the Roosters?
Yeah, Falmers. Yeah, they picked up Falmasilli from the Roosters, who had a pretty good cameo for us late in the season.
No, he's a decent player.
But yeah, Jack Bird, no, he had an awful year for the Broncos.
Can Jack Bird actually stay on the field? That's the question, right? Because he's played 0 footy for like 3 years virtually.
Yeah, well, he got injured in the first month last year.
Yeah, he's had no luck with injury. I mean, Jack Bird, when he's on the field, is a pretty decent player. The fact is, I guess the question is, has he retained any of that? And can he bring it for the Red V? I think it's doubtful.
Yeah, and they've lost Aitken, Frizzell, even though, as you said, Mario is overrated. He has been for a little while. And even emerging players, getting rid of Tristan Saylor,
some off-field issues.
Yeah, there were some off-field
allegedly.
issues there.
Yep.
They've lost a lot and they've gained bugger all.
Mario, I need specifically from you, what are the virtues that Anthony Griffin's going to bring to this team?
I don't think virtue and Dragons in 2021 have any place in the same sentence. I mean, you've got Hitler II in charge of the team, and they're still hitching their wagon on bloody alleged rapist. So get fucked, Dragons. To the people, the few Dragons friends that I have who are actually decent people, such as Giannis, I'm sorry for you. To the rest of you, fuck off, you bunch of racist scum. You deserve this. The spoon is yours. Enjoy it. Shove it up your asses.
You did have the Warriors at 16th, though, so you don't think they're going to get the spoon. Just be clear about that.
Oh, shit. Hang on a second. God damn it. Did I just say that? Yeah, I'm sorry. Dragons are 15th on 12 points. Oops, my bad. Equal with Broncos. I got excited with how much I hate the Dragons and I just wanted to put them in last. But yeah, they're just slightly less bad than the Warriors.
And on that absolutely nihilistic fuck up, thank you very much for joining us on the Voluntary Tackle. That was a marathon. We've jammed it in. Xander, Mario, thank you very much for joining us. And thank you, listeners at home, for joining us as well. On a very quick note, I did get a quick interview on the weekend with David Hunter with the Hypothetical Rugby League podcast. Look out for that. I believe it's on March 8th. We'll see you all very soon. And we're sorry about the whole Nazi comment at the end there. I think Mario's on the sauce.